Now, Sports Talk with Brodes. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Brodes. I want to talk more about the 76ers before they go out and attack the Houston Rockets on Wednesday night. Let's talk more about what we saw out of Ben Simmons and what we saw defensively from this team and some other minor topics I want to throw your way. We will start with Ben Simmons. And I think today on the Sports Bash, when we were flowing conversation back and forth, something came up that really sparked not really a light bulb in my head because it's not an idea, but it definitely described how I felt. And I feel I really want to explain it further. So essentially, what came up was there are certain players in this league that can do damage when they want to do damage. It is a common theme for these players to really destroy an opponent. Then there's the players that have big nights, but it's not because they mentally prepared to go out and do it. Sometimes it just happens. Hell, Furkan Korkmaz once had an explosive offensive night. When you play in this league, there are average players and good players that sometimes it's their night. They're able to deliver. They're able to drop 40 points. They're able to score 35 points. It's going to happen if you play hundreds of games. There will ultimately be times where it's your chance, it's your opportunity to really drop a bunch of shots, and you do. But where Ben Simmons lies, he is able to do it significantly more than what he does. So when you watch Jordan Clarkson knock down 8 threes and give you 40 points, Jordan Clarkson's not a guy that puts his mind to it, and then whenever he wants, he gives you 40. That's not realistic. With Ben Simmons, you don't get that, but it's not because of lack of talent. It's not because of anything other than he doesn't want to. When he wants to, it's a no-brainer. It happens. So why I feel the way that I do is he is in the category of a player who, when he is telling himself, okay, I'm going to destroy this matchup, I'm going to see a mismatch, I'm going to attack a mismatch. I can blow by this guy every single possession. Okay, well, why don't I? When he challenges himself and when there's a little bit of a motor behind him, he annihilates teams. He annihilates opponents. He doesn't fall in the category of guys where he lucks into it. Or, hey, it's just his night. No. Because you can see the switch. You can see the difference in aggressiveness. When he says, I'm determined, I'm going to get to the rim, I'm going to use my baby hook, hell, I'm going to face up a bit and then attack. I do see similarities in Joel Embiid's face-up game and Ben Simmons' face-up game. Now, they're different versions of one another. I'm not saying they're absolutely 100% the same because they're two different players with two unique different skill sets, but it's almost as if I watch both of those guys now transition into their version of the face-up game, you could tell that they've put the work in throughout times with the coaching staff to really maybe add that to their game and add more to that version of themselves. My point is, Ben falls in the category of players that if he tells himself, hey, Ben, I'm going to go out there and really, really show what I can do. I'm going to take it to the next level tonight. I'm going to abuse whoever steps in my way. Well, then you're going to have that type of night. If Clarkson tells himself that, if Furkan tells himself that, if Shake Milton tells himself that, that doesn't necessarily relate on the court. And that's why I lose my damn mind thinking about Ben Simmons and thinking about the inconsistency of his aggressiveness. Now, after the game, he did touch on a couple things, all right? He said that he's working on the mental side of the game over the last few weeks. And if you look at the stats, that will show you that. That will support his logic. In February, he's averaging 21.3 points per game, 8.5 assists, 8.5 rebounds. So his stats are now continuing to rise. And when we saw him over the last handful of years around that 16 points per game number, we all knew it had to be better. We knew there had to have been a jump. And if this is what you're going to get out of Ben Simmons, well then yeah. The problem is now you're getting that same headline again of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid can't work well together. And I don't buy into that. Will you get a different version of Ben when Joel's out there? Yeah. If you add Joel Embiid to any team, you're going to have a different version of whatever your roster is now. That's inevitable. That's obvious. What you need out of Ben is taking advantage of mismatches more than he does. That can happen with Joel Embiid still on the floor. For example, he thought it was disrespectful that they put Rudy Gobert on him. And sure, you could look at it as disrespect, but what did he do? He said, fuck you. Isn't that what he did? Fuck you. Fuck you. Now, how come, and this is the matchup that always sticks out to me because I was so disturbed, but how come when Grayson Allen is one-on-one against him, he elects to dribble, pick up his dribble around the free throw line, turn his body around and look around the perimeter until somebody comes around for a dribble handoff or he kicks it out towards the perimeter on the other side of the floor? Why is it that they put Rudy Gobert on me, that's so disrespectful, but when Grayson Allen or some of these other small guard bums are on him, he doesn't want to have that mindset. He doesn't want to put his shoulder down and really go hard to the rack. Why? Why is it where one is disrespectful to him, but the other isn't laughable? The other should be laughable. The fact that Grayson Allen has ever lined up on Ben Simmons. Come on, dude. You're telling me you don't want to exploit that? You don't lick your damn chops thinking about that? Now, maybe this is the turning point. I have been praising over and over and over again for every sport, not just basketball, but I specifically drill it when it comes to the Sixers, is patience with growth. Is this that growing moment? Is that aha moment out of Ben Simmons? The light bulb went off. I do like the fact that he at least is coming out and claiming he's working on the brain side of things, because that is the problem. That's the trigger that needs to go off. Once the trigger in the brain censors everything in the body, I can dominate. I can dominate with Joel Embiid. I don't have to pass it every single time I drive. I don't have to pass it 90% of the time I drive, I should say, because there are times where he does do the layups, or he does take it off the glass, glides through the air, or has a monster slam dunk. So there are moments when that does happen. But he went on to talk about how, look, when you play this game one way for so long and your instincts are one thing, well, then it takes time to somewhat, not rebuild, and this isn't the exact words, I'm just somewhat grabbing his words and telling you how I interpreted them. But because he played this style of facilitation forever, it's a whole entire retool of his game, and it's taking him time to adjust. Now, I'm not anti that. That's normally how it goes. All of these players, all these NBA players that come into the league, there's an adjustment period. There's a learning experience. There's everything involved. But I also think it's fair to say, while it takes time to groom yourself with Ben, to pretend like it's all glory and it's just all been so beautiful and gorgeous to the point where you can't criticize the man, well, that's unfair too. That's unfair to the fan, and it's unfair to the people who look at Ben Simmons and recognize what he can be, but he's not giving that to you. I just really hope and pray that just like this 1-3 record on the road was a wake-up call to the Sixers, that this was that moment for Ben Simmons that really elevates his game and it tells him something. Where he goes back and watches the film and there's so much on tape that explodes to him, that pops to him. Where that he can recognize, man, there's this element to my game that I don't allow people to see every night, that I should have people see every night. The free throw shooting is part of that. He's been shooting the free throws better as of late. In the month of February, free throw shooting has been up. He made 12 of 13 free throws in that game against the... What team did they just play? Why am I drawing a blank? Who the hell did they just play? Not the Phoenix Suns. Really? Jordan Clarkson. The Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz. Sorry. I had a brain fart there. And a little hiccup upstairs. It happens. Shame on me, but it happens. And now I don't even remember where I was. What the hell is going on? The wake-up call. The Ben Simmons can do this whenever he wants. Wake-up call. Let's try and get back on track here. It's just disappointing, but at the same time, I'm just praying and praying and praying that this is something where Ben Simmons really puts all the information together and looks at it with this objective view of, okay, Ben, let me not be biased towards myself. I need to look at this objectively. I need to take a few steps back and analyze my game. This team is missing something. Can I step up? Can I help be a leader? Can I do what Joel Embiid did? Can he recognize what Joel Embiid has done and apply that to his own game? Because let's be realistic. While Joel Embiid has always been a fascinating player and a really good player and an entertaining player to watch, this snap of the fingers movement by him, he is now the most dominant player in the league MVP talks. The jump seemed to happen. Well, it didn't happen overnight. If you really studied his game, you realize that there were new things implemented throughout off seasons, and there were painful moments, and there was the crying after Game 7, and there was a lot that came into play. You saw one serious, huge leap. And how does Ben look at his own teammate and not want to do the same thing? And if he does, well, let's go, Ben, because it's time. It's time because you can do it. I don't hold you to the same standard as some of the others. There is a moment for the greater ones where it ends up happening. And I know you have it in there. You do. I'm not begging for Furkan to be a 30-point scorer. And hell, I'm not begging Ben Simmons to be either. But I say that because when you look at this and you look at the style of player that Ben Simmons can be, how no one has that skill set, how no one can defend that body frame, I need it more. I really do. I need it more. Now, I want to get into the defense with this basketball team because that's been a hot topic. And over the last 2 games, I've been in the camp of when they want to defend, they can defend because I've seen it. And they've been the scariest defensive team in the league. Now, the last 2 games, they've been getting blitzed with a lot of three-pointers, and they've seemed to struggle. While Ben Simmons comes out and says, I'm the best defender in the league, and I don't disagree with him whatsoever. I think he is that much of an insane weapon defensively on that end. There's been a lot of problems. Danny Green hasn't been strong. I thought Ben Simmons could play stronger. Now, remember, Joel Embiid is not out there. And oh, by the way, with Rudy Gobert defending Ben Simmons, when you have Joel Embiid in the mix, that changes a lot. And I just wonder, when it comes to Ben Simmons attacking all night long, if it wasn't Rudy Gobert, because Rudy Gobert had to defend Joel Embiid, what would you see out of Ben Simmons? Would it have been the same night? I would argue that you probably would not have seen anything close to the 32-point performance. But getting back to where I was with the defensive side of things, I got convinced a little more today than I was over the last 2 games of maybe there really is something to the defense. You know, the pick and roll defense has been an issue under the Brett Brown regime, and I don't think that it has been fixed. They tried things new, and even in the beginning of the season, we were really excited about Joel Embiid not sagging off, not being the guy that hangs around the paint, and now he's being pushed up on top of that pick and roll more, and you do see moments throughout, but there is still a major issue when you watch these guards go off and you watch these top-tier players constantly score. Now, you got to give credit to those players because that's what they do. That's what great players in the NBA, that's how they score. Great offense beats great defense in the NBA. So sometimes you just have to tip the cap. But there has been a common theme over the last handful of games, and I chalked it up to it being the regular season. I think when the game slows down, I always tie it back to there's no way in hell that I can see an NBA postseason game played that fast. I would never imagine seeing the Utah Jazz play with that type of blitzing, play with that type of speed, nonstop up and down, running 10,000 miles in the damn game. If they were wearing a Fitbit or an iWatch, that's what it would tell you post-game. There's just no way that it plays out that way. So when the game naturally slows down, I don't think it would be as much of an issue. Will it be some sort of issue? I think, sure, you can look at it and say there's something to it. There's something there. there is somewhat of the same thing occurring when we talk about the defense, but there's no way it's going to be that ugly. I find it so hard to believe that anyone could play that fast when we talk about half-court sets. And the 45 3 attempts, it's crazy. You're watching a lot of these teams. You go out west and you see a different identity. This Sixers team, they don't shoot a lot of threes, which means they're not scoring a lot of threes. And they're taking a lot of deep two-pointers, a lot of far ones. A lot of people got on Brett Brown because he was chucking up a lot of threes. Well, is there something to it? Is that where the league is? Can you win basketball games if you're trading off twos for threes constantly? And that goes back to an argument we've been having for the last how many years? Can you win an NBA championship with a big man? And are you seeing a product of scoring a lot of two-pointers, not taking a lot of threes because your best player is naturally a big man? Yes, he can shoot the threes. And yes, there's Seth Curry, Danny Green, and there is spacing on this team that, hey, if you're going to bring the double, you can find an opponent in the corner, have it swing around one or two times, and you are going to find a shooter. Now, they need to cash in and make their shots, and right now, you're seeing both of those two guys struggle a tad. But there is something to this. I think I'm more worried about the lack of three-point shooting, the lack of scoring threes, than I am the defense. I feel the defense is there, and it will be there when they dial in and when the game slows down. I don't think more three-point shooting's coming then. If anything, you might see less three-point shooting, and then you're really in trouble if the other team is still going to be popping a lot of threes. Now, maybe not to the 45 number, but even if it's, the condensed version because of the postseason, well, there is something to that. There's something to this mid-range two-point game and trading points back and forth. Once you start getting towards these teams that have playmakers, that have specialists, that have more talent. You went to the West Coast and you saw better talent. You haven't seen that much great talent in the Eastern Conference. Listen to how crazy this is. So right now, they are sitting at 18-10 after 28 games. Where were they last year? They were at 20-8. They had a better record last year at this point of the season, yet it doesn't feel that way. Why is that? Well, right now, they're sitting in the first seed. Last year, they were in that 4-5 area that pissed everybody off. Well, what happened? The Milwaukee Bucks went on this sensational ride in the regular season. Well, what did that bring them? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They got murdered in the playoffs, right? They underachieved big time. Things got messy. Things got really ugly. Storylines started to pop. What's going on with the coaching staff in Milwaukee? What's going on with Giannis? Is he going to stay? Is he not? Now, ultimately, we know how it ended, but I think it's very interesting to bring that up. How now you're in the first seed with you're in the first seed with the worst record, and last year you were in the 4th, 5th seed area with a better record. Well, because who was playing great that year? It wasn't just the Bucks. You had the Boston Celtics. You had your standard teams up at the top. Miami ended up getting up there. I think Indiana had a nice stretch. Who else was up there? Yeah, the Sixers, of course. I mean, it was kind of that category. But because you're in the first seed, I don't think that the outrage is the same. Oh, and of course, because the head coach isn't Brett Brown. That's another reason why you are now in the conversation you are in instead of the outrage, I feel. It's because you're in the first seed and not the 4th or 5th, and you have a worse record, and the head coach has changed, so the outrage just isn't as strong for the guy, which I understand why. It's his first year here, and his resume speaks for himself. I'm just trying to look at it with context and ask the question, why is it this way? I also want to touch on this, and this is before we get to some anytime hotline calls from yesterday's game and the reaction right afterwards. We had a hypothetical thrown on the Sports Bash today, and I can't believe someone texted into the text board with this question, but it was about Blake Griffin. And would you be interested in Blake Griffin? And to me, it's an easy answer. Hell no. He stinks. Blake Griffin is awful. Blake Griffin is a shell of himself. Blake Griffin is so beat up, he's irrelevant to the league. I couldn't tell you the last time I ever thought of Blake Griffin. 3 years ago, okay, he worked on his game. The answer is no. I wouldn't touch Blake Griffin with a 10-foot pole. Stinks. The guy is awful. No way in hell. Look at that contract, too. Arguably the worst contract in the entire NBA. But then this was brought up. because of Tobias Harris's contract, would Daryl Morey ever look at Blake Griffin's contract and say, well, hold on a second, $36.8 million this season. Next year, $39 million. But after that, he's off the books. If you question Tobias Harris and who he is and look at this abomination of a contract, do you see an out with Blake Griffin? You can get the money off the books with Blake Griffin, and then you would not have Tobias Harris here anymore. That opens up the salary numbers for Daryl Morey to go to work and get his fingerprints on things. Here's why I don't think that would happen. And here's Tobias's remainder. $34 million, $36 million, $37 million, $39 million. So Tobias Harris is going to have those type of cap hits as we continue. One, I don't think it'll happen because Daryl Morey said he's in a win-now mode, and I think that they value Tobias Harris as a win-now player. Now, you can make the argument that maybe Daryl Morey doesn't, and if Daryl Morey doesn't, this would be the avenue to go because then all of Tobias Harris money's off the books. You have Blake Griffin's contract off the books. And just to be clear, I don't think this is going to happen. This is a very big hypothetical, but I just think it's very interesting to look at. That's all. I would not do it. I value Tobias Harris right now, and I think this is more of who he is under Doc Rivers. With other coaches and other organizations, I wouldn't make the same assumption. Under Doc Rivers, there's something to it. He has the magic touch. So I don't think it's going to happen because I think they're in win-now mode, and they look at Tobias Harris as such a key piece to winning that championship. 2, Doc Rivers has say. And Doc Rivers, he doesn't have final say, but there's been plenty of reports out there that, Daryl Morey and Doc Rivers, this is a team effort, a collaboration effort. I know people don't like to hear that based off of how the Eagles have gone, but it is a reality. And there was conversations about, okay, is Ben Simmons available? But Doc Rivers wanted to use him. Doc Rivers wanted to have Ben Simmons as an option. He wanted to coach him and have a chance to work with him. And so ultimately, that's why Ben Simmons is still here, is because Doc Rivers vouched for wanting to keep him. I don't think there's a shot in hell that Doc Rivers looks at Tobias Harris and says, I want to move on from him. I would love to take Blake Griffin's. You're basically, it would be a contract thing. Has nothing to do with Blake Griffin's play. But then you are admitting that you are going to be worse when Daryl Morey just mentioned being in win-now mode. And nothing adds up in that situation. So I thought it was a unique perspective. I thought it was a unique text to the text board, but there's no way in hell I would do it. Now, my phone is insanely blowing up right now, and I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on. So I normally don't do this, but I thought it was weird to be getting constant vibrates to that level. But, of course, it's just a group chat, and now I feel like a moron. I want nothing to do with Blake Griffin. Nothing. Now, what if he gets bought out? That's something getting tossed around. If he gets bought out, would you take him for that backup forward role? The answer for me is still, once again, no. I am out on Blake Griffin. I think Blake Griffin stinks. I think you can find something else, a different player in that 4 area. No, thank you. No, thank you with anything related to Blake Griffin. I'm keeping Tobias Harris. I'm keeping this abomination of a contract because if you get this version of Tobias Harris and then you're properly constructed around him, and at this point I'm thinking about Joel Embiid for the next 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons. I'm thinking about the growth of these players and adding pieces when Danny Green and Ferguson are off of the salary cap books and all. Well, I think you can really do some damage with Tobias playing this strong, even though it would take up this type of contract. I'd be okay with continuing down this road. I wouldn't try and get too cute and get too pretty. But if Daryl Morey was to do it, based off of Daryl Morey's resume and his track record, I guess I would say the man has a plan and the man has some sort of vision because he is that type of president of basketball operations. I just think that is so far-fetched. I think that is such a long shot that it's not too much of a reality. Once again, though, I just find it interesting what people come up with and some of the concepts that get into their brain. All right, so how about this? Let's take a couple anytime hotline calls that I did not get at yesterday after the game.
Well, I just got done watching the Sixers game, and it's one of those games that it kind of sucks that you wasted Ben Simmons' 40-plus point performance. And it's also I'm just a little frustrated that Joel Embiid didn't play, especially since it was announced right before tip-off that he was a scratch. I feel like it's one of those games. If he would have played, you probably would have won. Then again, Clarkson had 40-some points off the bench. So, again, it's a regular season. I think Daryl Morey will be looking to add more pieces off the bench. But I think they'll be okay. Again, they played against the top team in the NBA.
Yeah, they have been playing better teams, and they have been failing playing against better teams. So, I do think that there's something to it. But you know me, I'm a big sample size guy. I need more. I need to see more. So, I think it's very reasonable to look at this and say, is there something brewing? Is there a big question mark brewing? Only time will tell. We talk about how great of the wins the Boston Celtics games were, whether 13-13 and Danny Ainge is ready to make some moves and try and probably make something big happen to spark a sense of urgency out of that franchise. So does that devalue those wins? I think there's something to it. I just want to keep an eye out on some of these regular season matchups that hold more weight than others and see how they play. By no means do I think that this team is so much of a dumpster fire that they went from unbelievable to they stink, they're awful. But I think that this now opens the door to maybe have some more conversation about who they really are. There was a stretch where you thought, okay, you know their identity. Now I think that there's some question marks to their identity, and only time will tell. So you can raise the question, what does this mean that they're failing against good teams? You can also say Joel Embiid wasn't there. And I thought that Doc Rivers saying he was available, and then he was like, oh, I had no clue. There's some wonkiness involved with what's happening. And I wonder if this has anything to do with what we've seen in years past about medical staff and how things are going down behind closed doors. It doesn't seem like much has changed from that angle. And speaking of things changing internally, I go back to those 2s and 3s thing. Last year, the Sixers were so dialed into analytics, it was gross. And that wasn't a Brett Brown thing. That was an organizational thing from guys way above Brett Brown that somewhat forced analytics down the throat of the franchise. Well, it's just funny that now it seems like they're going for a lot of these long-range 2s, not so much 3s, and maybe it's starting to really cost this team when you play teams that are built properly in 2021 where you're just constantly shooting 3s at will, and it's more about how many you take, because the more you take, the more you're going to make. And if you make more 3s, you have a better chance of winning. And now they take too many steps backwards from analytics, and it seems like it could possibly be costing them there as well.
Hey, what's up, Brodes? I'm here after the Jazz loss. Jazz scored 134 points. That was a lot of points. I mean, their game is shooting 3s. I think they shot like 45, 53s. That's insane. Bro, Ben Simmons on it, man. Holy shit. 42 points, 9 rebounds, 12 assists. That is phenomenal. Ben's not going to play that way every night, obviously. But if you can play somewhere like half of that, that's going to be like great for the Sixers. Harris was also nice. 36 points, 14 to 24 shooting. He had like 11 rebounds. I loved Harris' game tonight.
I did too. But going back to Ben real quick, unfortunately, this is how it is. And I'm not saying I want it to be this way, but based off of what he has been to this point, this is how it is. Normally, when a player does something like that, you appreciate it, right? If Joel Embiid had 42, all we talk about is how great it was, how fantastic it was. And we still look at Ben and say it was an awesome performance, obviously. You can't walk away and say anything bad about it, so you're going to acknowledge that it was strong. But instead of just appreciating it, we ask the question, how come you felt like doing this tonight? Why do you show us that this is capable, but then it's not something consistent, and it goes away, and it only happens when it seems to be something that fuels you? Okay, Rudy Gobert pisses you off because he's guarding you, so you attack that matchup. Grayson Allen, here's just another guy. I'll stop and I'll look around the perimeter to see who I can pass to. So it's almost as if with Ben, okay, yeah, you did it, and we love that you did it, but we knew you can do it. Why? And it's not that way for everyone. Joel Embiid, a 42-point performance out of that guy, and we're streaking down Philadelphia. We're running around the streets naked, just swinging the hips around and seeing what's flapping because we're so pumped up and so excited that Joel Embiid is becoming this threat, this guy. And I guess here's why. Maybe I answered my own question. because it's common theme. It's a common theme. It's standard for you now. Joel Embiid giving you 30 plus is what he does. It's another day at the office. So when it is just another Joel Embiid night, you're admiring it because it's, wow, he really has elevated to this level, and he really has taken it a step further where you can rely on this man to do it. Appreciate that. So I think it just constantly comes back to consistency.
Hey, bro, it's Daniel calling here from Virginia. Just calling in. I think Ben had a great game tonight. I think Toby had a great game. I mean, I'm sure you're going to touch on, the bench and the missed opportunities in 3-point. Steph Curry needing to be able to step up, seeing if Danny Green can give us anything more from the 3-point line. One of the biggest things that I want to discuss is just Joel Embiid. I mean, how are you going to be the MVP of the league? How are you going to consider yourself the best center in the league if you're playing 2 games, you're out a game? We're lucky if he plays 3 games before he misses one.
I'm frustrated too, but when you think about it, it felt like it was way worse in years past, right? We praised him earlier this season for battling through everything, and maybe there's a correlation. Maybe he was battling through it so much that now it's catching up to him, and so much, I'm only talking about 20 basketball games, but, there were so many times questionable back stiffness. Oh, he's going to play, and we were all shocked and stunned. Maybe that is catching up to him, and, I'm not happy about it. Maybe also, though, maybe it was a medical staff decision where Joel Embiid didn't have to say, and it came down to, look, I don't think you should be able to go tonight. So if you're not able to go tonight, then there's only so much you can do. And I always go back to, I don't like that it's this way, but with the NBA, regular season doesn't matter as much, and the players run the asylum. And there's so much about sports these days that you don't like it, but you adapt to it. For example, when you can't touch a quarterback, we all bitch and complain about these hits that throw 15-yard flags out there, but we still watch it because it's the NFL and it's football and it's what we love. So we hate it, we despise it, we bitch and complain about it, yet here we are watching it just because you are annoyed by it, you adapt. And you make that assessment like, okay, I'm still going to watch the damn game, but I can't stand this. With load management, I feel with Joel, we kind of have to have the same mentality. I don't like it. It really does suck. It blows. But this is what Joel Embiid is. This is the NBA. Guys rest. And they don't take it as seriously in the NBA regular season. I wish it wasn't that way. I want it to be playoff basketball 24/7 even throughout the regular season. But it's not a reality. So I'm not going to expect the referees in football to not throw a flag. Well, I guess I'm not going to expect Joel Embiid I'm not going to expect him to play every night. This is who he is. This is Joel Embiid. This is his career. Now, there's going to be moments where I go on full blast and I rant and I just rage because it's that type of day for me, and I might take it to an extreme because some days just hit differently, and sometimes I feel, if Joel Embiid sat out one night and sat out another night, sometimes just depending on that day and depending on the context, I feel differently about it. There is a part of me that feels stressed because you finally see a big matchup. And there's a bit inside of me that thinks he shied away from playing Rudy Gobert. And that seems so crazy. Brodes, are you kidding me? Look at the way Embiid has been playing this year. Yeah, I know. Then why wasn't he out there? So, like I said, I'm boiled up inside about it, but I'm also aware that this is what it is. So I have both feelings conflicting one another. There is a bit of me that thinks, though, he wanted none of the smoke, which unfortunately makes me disappointed. What doesn't make me disappointed, though, is Orbit Energy and Power. They are the best in the business. With over 20 years of experience in the solar industry, they are home to your solar experts in residential and commercial projects. They are dedicated to making sure your project is completed easily and properly by using high-quality materials and trained professionals. To get the job done right, their solar program eliminates your electric bill completely by offering flexible financing solutions such as $0 down. They provide water purification systems, backup energy services, battery storage, and more. So check out their information. It's all down below. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will see you next time.